Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our awesome day of action. My name is Miranda. I use they, them, theirs pronouns, and I'm the Women's Program Officer here at the New Haven Pride Center. Before we begin today's program, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land in which we are hosting this event. The New Haven Pride Center was founded and operates on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Palgasset, Neantic, and the Quinnipiac peoples. We hope that from wherever you are, you take a moment to acknowledge and honor the Native people whose lands you occupy and the history of the place you're in. Find out more about Native lands at native-land.ca. Now, I'm so excited to welcome you to today's program. This Day of Action is hosted in honor of International Women's Day. We're excited to host our panel, Queer Women Organize Right Now, followed by a coffee hour with me at 3:30 p.m., and our night of action with Planned Parenthood votes at 6 p.m. Finally, before we begin, we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who made today's program possible. Thank you, CT Humanities and Planned Parenthood, for all of your support. Your support helps facilitate important events like this one. If you'd like to know more about sponsoring programs like these, please feel free to reach out. I would also like to take a moment to thank Nick for coordinating our ASL interpreting and all of the amazing interpreters like Simone and Adrian that we work with to make our programming more broadly accessible. Now I have the honor of introducing Kamora Herrington of Kamora's Cultural Corner, an amazing organizer and a powerful woman. Thank you for being here today, Kamora, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. The amazing, powerful feminine energy that's a part of the panel that you're about to experience is going to be amazing. So if you're watching this, if you end up fatigued, there's a reason we're bringing it to you, right? And so today is this day of action, and we're going to talk about organizing. And one thing that I want people to think about as we step into this conversation is there are beautiful activists in our community who do amazing activism. And there are wonderful organizers in our communities who do amazing organizing. And there's this melding of the two that is necessary. And very often we kind of get confused on what the difference is between the two of those. They need to inform each other. They need to be here. And today I want to talk about a whole lot about what activated us and what jumped us into the work. And then what took us to that next space of becoming organizers and organizing our folks, other folks, but organizing folks for a much larger and greater good. So thank you all for joining us for this conversation. Ground yourself, feel it. Know that for the next 60 minutes of your life, we are going to go on an amazing ride with some amazing women. And thank you for inviting us into your home to be a part of this. So I would like to invite Leah. And I'm sorry, right here, I've got to pull this up. Leah, I'm sorry. You've been Leah in my head for a while. Leah Juliett. Welcome. I've read about you. I've watched your videos. I don't know you. Who are you? Tell us about who you are and why you're the badass that you are.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Leah Juliett. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a writer, speaker, organizer, and activist from right here in Connecticut. And I'm the founder and executive director of March Against Revenge Porn. March Against Revenge Porn is an international 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to combating and eradicating tech-based sexual abuse, known commonly by most folks online as revenge porn. And we do that through global organizing of victims, allies, and supporters, media advocacy, victim support services. We have a podcast. We also do legal. We have a brand new legal defense fund as well. So we're aiding victims and turning them into advocates and organizing around the subject of tech-based sexual abuse, cyber sexual violence, image abuse, and non-consensual image sharing. And I've been doing that for about the past 5 years. I was an organizer around an advocate within the LGBTQ plus community since around the age of 13. So I'm not new to this space, but my work around revenge porn is about 5 years old. So very happy to be here, thankful and grateful to be joining you in this space today.
Very happy you're here and really looking to hear more about that organization. As I said, I've watched a few videos. I'm fascinated. And next is Sun Queen. Sun Queen is a New Haven-based activist, organizer, and all of the rest of it. And this is that beautiful place of who are you, what do you do, and what do we need to know about you?
Hello, peace. Thank you. I am Sun. Again, I am a native of New Haven. I am a poet. I am a published author. I am also one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter New Haven. I am an artist. I am an entrepreneur. I have an apparel line, Black Girls Are Sunshine, and I developed that brand because Black girls and Black women are often too much undervalued and disrespected. I am so many things. I am Sun. I am a Black queer woman, and yeah, I'm here.
Welcome. Yep. And we get to these places, and I can't do it without bringing in the folks who came before me. So Audre Lorde is definitely here. And I hope people heard, we all know that quote, right? So we don't live single issue lives. I think it became
Hi, I think we're having some technical difficulties, but thank you for holding on there. Hope everything is okay with you, Kamora. But just wanted to kind of get the conversation going a little bit and ask you all, what inspired you to get into this work as an organizer and as an activist. And I'll begin with Leah.
Sure. Like I said before, as an LGBTQ plus person growing up, I grew up in the most conservative red town in the state of Connecticut, which made my life weave and interact with many conservative politicians who actively voted against the rights of my body and the rights of my identity on a daily basis. So I started from a very young age working to create spaces for queer and trans people within my community. And then when I was 19, I founded March Against Revenge Porn because at the age of 14, nude photos of me were posted online and trafficked around the world without my consent. As a result of this, I dealt with suicidal ideation, I dealt with trauma, and a lot of other forms of PTSD. And the photos weren't taken down for over 5 years. So it was a form of what we now call tech-based sexual abuse. But at the time, I didn't know that what happened had a name. And so now I founded March Against Revenge Porn to give a name to the crime that so often affects women, marginalized folks, LGBTQ plus Americans, and people around the world. So that's what pushed me into advocacy, but it's really grown over the last 5 years. And I've grown through learning the stories of other folks who've been victimized and who've known folks who have been victimized, and how we can grow together as a community to grow past a world where tech-based sexual abuse and cyber sexual violence is so prevalent in our world.
Awesome. Thank you so much for telling a little bit of your story. I see that Kamora is back with us for now, so I'm just going to hop off the live stream.
Okay, and thank you so much. And I'm really sorry. It sounds like you guys took that where it was supposed to go, where I was hoping that it would go. So what got us there. But I do want to ask you, and this is a question for everyone here. What was the thing that activated you? So we've got all these different things that we care about that we jump into. But what was the issue that jumped you into activism? And this is for both Sun, Queen, and Leah.
So, as I just mentioned, my clothing brand and some of the reasons why I started my line, Black Girls Are Sunshine, are some of the things that started me into activism and being an organizer. Who better to tell my story and fight for my liberation than me? And being under represented and being dehumanized, who better than me? So those are some of the reasons why I decided to, or that was chosen for me to, be an activist. Who can tell your story better than you? Who can fight for you better than you yourself? And so for me, it was just that, because my voice matters. My body matter. My opinion matters. So I had to do it for me and for everyone else that looks like me.
I love that quote. I just wrote it down so I won't forget it. Who better to fight for my liberation than me? That I think is the through line to a lot of our stories as advocates and organizers. At least for me, I for so long stayed silent as a victim of sexual abuse that happened on the internet, tech-based sexual abuse. And I let other people tell my story. I let people call me a slut and a pariah and someone who should be ostracized because my body was exploited. And one day I opened up my computer screen when I was in college, and I saw the mugshot of the boy who had posted those photos of me in the first place. And he was on the run for sexually assaulting a minor. And that's kind of when I realized, that's the moment that snapped me into action, activated me, that people who hurt you will often go on to hurt other people if you don't speak out against what they've done in the first place. So I learned in that moment that in order to protect and preserve other young women, girls, and femmes, that I had to take a stand, tell my story. And I didn't realize that it would be starting a movement against this act of tech-based sexual abuse, but it ended up doing so. And now we've become a global entity at March Against Revenge Porn, fighting worldwide against abuses that happen to women and femmes on the internet.
Okay, now, and I wrote down the exact same quote that you did, right? Because it hit me in that place. So, who better to speak for me than me? So there's voice, and you both have talked about voice. And I want to know, who gave you permission to use your voice? And then how did you then use that permission? Oh, this is Kamora time. Speak as the spirit moves you.
Who gave me permission to use my voice? I did. Oftentimes folks invite you into the room, right, to use you as a checkbox, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are listening, that they are active listening, or that they care about your story. Again, it's like, okay, I have a Black woman in the room, I have a Black queer woman in the room. So it's not necessarily permission. The permission wasn't given, right? I'm a Black woman. I'm a Black queer woman. I'm supposed to be silent, show up. So who gave me the permission was me. I have a mouth, I have a voice. I'm going to say what I have to say. I am going to be my whole self, my true self, be organic. And so that permission comes from myself and, of course, the creator. So yeah, I gave myself the permission, the liberty, the freedom to do so. Yeah.
And for this conversation, because I'm really hoping that we've got an intergenerational audience. So you stepped in and you claimed your space and you use your voice. And very often when people are interacting with those of us who figure out how to claim and use our voice, they see the success of this loud voice that's happening. Where is there, or has there been pushback? So as you've claimed and stepped into the space that is yours, that is your birthright, that is yours, what has that pushback looked like? And I'm asking specifically, and Leah, I want you to think of and answer all of this too. What has that pushback been? But specifically, what does the pushback look like from those who you stepped into this work considering your allies and your peers? What is that pushback to using your authentic voice loudly for what you believe you're supposed to be using it for?
So the pushback looks like not providing the support and access and resources and creating a safe space. The pushback has been, oh, we can't work with them, or, we can't work with her because she's queer, or not taken serious because I'm a Black queer woman. Yeah, so the pushback is really about not creating space and, again, support that it would look like for other folks. It's difficult at times.
Beautiful, thank you. And Leah, I'm going to come to you with the exact same thing. Who gave you your voice? Who allowed you? And I hope people, as they're listening to this, if you're offended by this question at all, hopefully you are. And I worded it in a way that's very pointed and asking what it is. But very often, this is something that we're asked, so how can I allow you to use your voice? How can I give you your voice? I'm offended by that when that happens. And so I've made sure to talk to the panelists before we got here, saying I'm going to ask one of the most disrespectful questions that I've ever received. Who gave you your voice? So Leah, who gave you your voice and allowed you to use it?
I kind of have a twofold answer to this. The first is that my younger self gave me my voice. This is the story of my younger self. And I use she, her pronouns to refer to my younger self, who used she, her pronouns at the time. And she was exploited. She was victimized. Her body was used as a currency to generate shame. And so it took years for me to be able to have the courage to tell her story. And so she, when she was healed, gave me the permission as an extension of that voice, as an extension of that body and who that person is. I am her, she is me. Gave me permission to tell that story. And of course, I wake up every day giving myself permission to use my voice. No one has that permission except me and my younger self. There's days where we're like, this is a day for care. This is a day for grief. This is a day for sadness and rawness and realness. And we're going to sit with that and we're not going to speak out today. But the moment that microphone is back in my hands, that megaphone is back in my hands, that's my choice. That's my active choice to use my voice. But of course, we have to talk about the fact that who gave me permission? Well, my whiteness gave me permission. Unfortunately, my race and the fact that I'm femme presenting, has given me opportunity that unfortunately Black and brown people in the same role as me don't often have, like Sam was talking about. And I will say, though, at the same time that the subject that I talk about oftentimes prevents me from being in certain spaces. I've been invited into high schools, but then when the person in charge of determining whether or not I'm allowed to speak here's what I'm talking about, they say, actually, no, we're going to shut that down. So the subject matter of which I speak about, although I think it's universal to everyone, certainly closes some doors for me in who allows me to speak. But every day I wake up, I invite my younger self to come and tell her story, and I tell that story, and I actively tell the story of my personal lived experiences today as the person that I am.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now, I can tell you when that, yes.
Can I just add something to what Leah was saying? Yes, like I had that experience where someone has asked for me to speak, and it's like, hey, well, let me send you this because I don't want you talking about that. And it's like, so do you really want me to speak? You want me to show up and you want to then be able to dictate my narrative. Like, what are we doing here? Definitely have encountered those experiences too often. And also, when you were talking about your younger self and your girl, and that's why I use Black girls as sunshine instead of Black women, right? Because I felt like I feel like, oftentimes we want to, go back and maybe write our younger self stories, or, talk to our younger self, give our younger self, excuse me, just give our younger self some, words of wisdom, and, oh, if I would have known, and all those type of things. And our younger self, shows up in our adulthood, and that is very important to, still connect with your younger self to navigate through today's journey.
I totally agree. Thank you for saying that.
And I'm thankful for Gen Z for pushing that piece. I'm Gen X, and we're supposed to like leave the past behind and move forward, move forward, move forward. I appreciate the gift that your generation has given us in holding on to that and holding on to it loudly and beautifully. And I'm going to bring, so we talked about who gave you that voice, and we talked a little bit about that pushback, and you started to take us there a little bit, Sun Queen. But how do you care for yourself and care for your voice? And as someone who's been doing this for a while, I can tell you about many nights where I know that my message is the message, but every person who loves me and cares for me is telling me how to nicely soften my message so that I can be heard. So again, like those high school gigs you're talking about, Leah, like, Kamora, I know you want to talk about some anti-Blackness, but maybe if we talk about diversity and inclusion, you'll have space for the gig. How do you hold on to your authentic voice when the people who are there with the checks are saying, let's soften it a little bit more to get it into the academy? I'm gonna step back. I want to hear a whole lot right here.
I'll take that, I guess. As far as pushback, I've gotten, unfortunately, a lot of pushback because I've been very privileged to be able to speak in national and international spaces about this issue that I'm so passionate about. And because of that, that opens my accessibility to trolls and internet haters and just mean-spirited people, both who are allies to me, but also who are certainly not. I remember the morning I took the LSAT, the test to get admittance into law school, I received an anonymous Instagram message from a man telling me that I'm a monster and I deserve to die simply because I had a loud voice. And that stuck with me, and that was a little bit traumatizing for me because it just felt so unwarranted and out of the blue. And so I've learned that I have to constantly be in acts of healing for myself to make sure that I can show up every day and not feel scared and not feel isolated by these folks whose only agenda is to make me feel small. And then, of course, there are people who are in my circles, in my communities, who say, you need to make yourself smaller. You need to water yourself down. Why are you still talking about that? It's been 10 years. Here's the thing. There's no timeline on trauma. Healing is not linear. And I'm allowed to talk about this issue and this thing that happened to me as a young child for as long as I need to and want to and can. And I think that that's relevant for anyone who's talking on something that's important to them. Your voice is on your time, and you decide when that time is up, if that time ever will be up. It's not up to people who want to make you small. I think it's deeply unfortunate that some people who claim to be in your corner are spending their time and wasting their time really trying to make you a smaller, more watered down version of yourself. I think that at the end of the day, that's just going to, water the message down, and it's going to make it reach less people who need to hear it. So I will never do that. I will never water myself down, even for audiences, for sponsors, for money. It's just not worth it, because the people that I'm really trying to reach are the ones who need to hear my full, authentic, unfiltered message.
Son, you got something to add to that or build on?
That's it. Like, period. Like, don't, you invite me, but do I need this to be my platform if I have to water myself down? Do I really need this money? Probably, right? Because listen, I'm a struggling artist, and I am overworked and underpaid as a Black queer woman, right? But I'm not for it. Like, I'm not doing it. You talked about diversity and conclusion? Like, what does that really look like in the workplace, or just in everyday life? I feel like when it comes to diversity and inclusion, that again, that's another, box being checked off. Hey, we implemented, a little conference or workshop on diversity and inclusion, but there's no real undoing racism, unbiased trainings. Um, Folks are not really examining their whiteness. So, what are we really talking about with diversity and inclusion? Because we have diversity and inclusion, but then where's the equity? So yeah, when it comes to, and I think also too, like, we diversity inclusion, like, are we really naming what needs to happen in these spaces, or are we using buffering, words, buzzwords? um so yeah, like, if you're not committed to my advancement, or if you're not, going to be committed to who I am, then I don't want your check. I don't want to share my lived experience with you. Why? For the money? Would be great. But no.
And I just need to just jump in. I'm not trying to stop the flow right now, but I've got to jump in with the commercial right now, because you started off with you are overworked and underpaid. And you are doing the work that is the historic work of Black women, and definitely the work of Black lesbians in our community, which is advancing the uncomfortable truths in a way that doesn't get a regular paycheck. So your Cash App is $Sun 2017, right?
That's
And
it.
as we talk about this and as we think about this, I will tell you that I've got a bias towards authentic community organizers. I can tell you that when I can read some academic something about organizing and it lines up with what I know, I do a because the organizers who I grew up underneath were pissed off, angry people who were on the street doing the thing, right? And so therefore there wasn't a check that was attached to it. And there are places where I see checks attached to this work where we still have funders. And so my place of screaming anti-Blackness ends up being watered down to this diversity and inclusion thing. And so I want everyone to understand that as we're talking about organizers and we're thinking about how important organizing is, because we're here today, this is a very important thing. We need to understand that organizers are not paid for their work. Most organizers are not paid for their work, even if they figured out how to get the job. The job says that they're doing 15 hours a week. As an organizer, has anyone ever stayed inside of the parameters of what they say they're paying you for? Is that anyone else's experience, or am I just making something up?
You got it.
This is the
and Black Lives Matter New Haven is grassroots, so we don't have funders. And that also takes me to the fact that while being an organizer, folks often forget that I do actually have a full-time, role that I'm in. I work in healthcare. So I am, again, working underpaid, 40 plus hours a week, and still doing emails and doing X, Y, and Z that I have to do for being an organizer. So yeah, it's
so pay my sister, because she's out there in these streets doing this for us. Leah, what's your Cash App?
Thank you. My Cash App and Venmo are both Leah Juliett with 2 T's at the end. And I totally feel that so deeply. I also have a regular day job. I work at Triangle Community Center, which is Fairfield County's LGBTQ plus community resource center. And so I find that normally doing my work for March Against Revenge Porn, I am in the dark at 2 a.m. with my cats everywhere, typing emails like, okay, you've been victimized. Here's what you have to do. And it's so much. But of course, it's unpaid work as well. And it feels worth it to me. But of course, you can't you can't fill from an empty cup, I guess is the word. And it's so hard sometimes to do so when you are being overworked and underpaid. And I think that that's definitely an element of organizing and activism that isn't talked about enough. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, this is my soul place, because this is the work that's necessary, and this is the work that's dangerous and hard. And I want to talk about those 2 a.m. moments, because when people see the organizers, they see, I mean, when you're organizing, when you're doing it well, you've got a whole lot of people around you, right? And so it appears as if you are one in a number and you're being carried. And there's a whole lot of folks who are watching this and they're feeling, I can't wait to step into this. I've done this, and this is my world. And we are women. And as women, we are great at doubting ourselves. Damn, we can doubt the hell out of ourselves. So if you can just share, and I want to share the light of it, but what are those, as an organizer, what are those moments in the dark? And how do you get yourself through that? What's that pushback that we don't want to talk about in public? But what is that? Why am I doing this? I'm a fake. I don't belong here.
So those 2 a.m. or whenever moments, because they come throughout the day, at times look like crying, crying and questioning often. Why am I doing this? Because there's so much pushback, or I don't have and feel the support I need to go on. And again, right, I'm not being paid for it. And it's a lot. Excuse me. Black women are always on the go, right? We're mothers, nurturers, teachers, healers. We're always doing something. And so that takes away from our self-care. So again, it looks like crying and just feeling heavy, and not knowing what to do, right? Because everyone is like, oh, she's a Black woman, she's strong. But me being strong looks different to you, right? Because you see me on the front line and, creating and doing all these things, but I don't have the choice. I'm not afforded the same opportunities. I have to work harder. I have to have 2 and 3, streams of income. So those days, those nights, those minutes and hours, they are heavy. We are crying. We are talking to ourselves. Right. And then that question comes up for us. Is anyone listening? Am I being heard? Am I being seen? Am I being felt? What I'm doing, will it be in vain? So that's a picture for me, what those times look like.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate all of the vulnerability here and the space to be vulnerable myself. For me at least, those moments are deeply rooted in shame. And I think I talk about this a lot. And I think a lot of people think that because, I've told my story and I talk publicly about this nuanced issue, that I'm shameless. I'm not shameless at all. I have a lot of shame, and it appears at a lot of times at night when I have a full inbox and I'm crying and I'm like, I am not prepared to answer this question. I am not prepared to talk to this person. I don't feel ready. I don't feel heard. I don't feel seen. Is this worth it? I feel alone and isolated in this space. And that's when I feel shame. And instead of saying, no, that shame doesn't exist, I've decided to reclaim it. And I very much believe in the power of recycled and reclaimed shame, using that shame to push you, using the energy and recycling it and pushing you to the front lines, across the bridges, in the spaces where you need to lead moments of advocacy and activism, and using it to inspire you and encourage you in those moments. Because honestly, like, we're all human, and to say that any of us are shameless is, I just don't think personally true. At least I'm not. I'm very much full of shame. And, I'll say, preparing for this conversation, I was like, well, maybe I'm not an activist enough. Maybe I'm not an organizer enough. And those voices are the shame in your head that's saying you are not enough. You are not prepared for this conversation, when, you've done everything you can to be prepared for this conversation. And I say, instead of saying, I'm going to shut that down, I'm saying, I'm going to use that and invite that and take its loudness and its megaphone, borrow it, and use it to send a message that's actually meaningful and that can shift the paradigm.
Thank you. And I want absolutely everyone who's listening to this, who's not sure what to or how to step into, to hear all of this. And thank you for naming the vulnerability piece. Because when I look at boomers, baby boomers were taught, we don't talk about it, period. We just won't talk about it. It's not up for debate, right? And then I'm Gen X, and we were taught to talk about it, but you know what? It doesn't faze me. I'm going to tell you what happened, but I'm cool. And then millennials showed up, and they figured they could talk about the thing that happened and how they feel about it. And I'm just going to keep going to Gen Z that said, we're going to talk about it. We're going to examine how it feels. And then we're going to do the work of doing the healing and getting to that other side. But I want to name that. So as folks are listening to this conversation, understand that now that's the Kamora breakdown. So that's all that really is. But when it comes to how we interact with this imposter syndrome and all of the rest of it, folks who are older than me, we're taught to pretend it's not there. When we talk about burnout, when we talk about activist burnout, when we talk about organizer burnout, a whole lot of that burnout comes from, oh, I'm cool. Oh, I'm fine. I got this. Now, I will tell you that for me, those 2 o'clock, and you are so right, that can be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that can be at 2 o'clock in the morning. But when those things happen, the frustration and the part that really pulls the tears for me is the fact that I understand that no matter what's happening right now, I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And as much as I want to quit and not do this anymore, I can cry for the next 6 hours, and tomorrow I'll be out there again. It's here. And I'm going to ask you, because I see y'all show up. Why do you continue to show up? What's out there? What's the benefit? Okay, son, talk first.
What is out there? I believe in sharing my story. I believe in, I may not reach all, but if it's just one, then that's good. And I'm going to continue to do it. Like I spoke before, I live with being oppressed and marginalized. So am I going to run and go get someone else? Or am I going to continue to be out there and sharing and fighting? So even though we may not be given all of these possibilities and opportunities, that I am going to be a part of creating these spaces for Black women, for Black folks. I am going to no longer, well, no, I'm not going to need to sit at any tables. I am going to build a table. If I'm not allowed in spaces, I am going to create spaces. And so that's what's out there. What's out there is possibilities. What is out there is that someone needs to see me, because representation matters. Someone needs to hear me. And yeah, I won't give up. And so that's what's out there for me, that I have to keep going. And right, that's like embedded in me to to keep going and to not give up. You start something, you have to finish it. That's what, one of the things that, right, we were taught. And so that's what it is.
Yeah, I very much agree with that sentiment. For me, it's also, like I mentioned before, I mentioned my younger self. And for people who know me personally, they probably get annoyed by how often I reference my younger self. But when I was younger, I didn't have a voice. I really didn't. And that ate away at me psychologically and physically. When I was my freshman year of college, I was abusing alcohol. I was sleeping outside in the cold, hoping to just freeze to death, like this really deep, dark depression that I believe came on to me because of the immense shame that I felt and the pressure at which my voice was pushing on my voice box saying, please tell this story, please tell this story. But I didn't because I was scared. I owe it to her, to my younger self, to tell that story. And I also, because it's not just her who is also me. It's also the 10 million internet users in the United States and the 1 in 3 internet users worldwide who are victimized by this same act of violence. So it's not just me. I know that there are so many people out there experiencing it. And if I, being the privileged person that I am, have this voice, have this platform, don't use it, then this act of violence is going to continue to be perpetuated because no one's going to ever speak about it. One of the really interesting things that I found when I was in high school and I found my naked pictures on the internet was that there were hundreds of photos of other young underage girls on these websites that I knew, that I've met before, and none of them were talking about it. And obviously, it's a privilege to be able to talk about it and to have that voice. But what I'm saying is the amount of people talking about what happened to them in comparison to the amount of people who this is actively happening to is very disproportionate. So if you are privileged to have a voice and a platform and have the ability to speak on it, do it, because so many people need to hear it. And it will be life-saving and life-affirming to people to be able to hear that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is another end to come out on. You have to see yourself through.
And you said something earlier. Son, you had something to say? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Leah was saying. Right, that there are so many folks out there who feel like they are voiceless, and so a lot of my poetry and organizing the work that I do is for those people who feel like they don't have a voice, or the fact that even if they share their story, that no one is going to listen to them, that they are going to continue to be victimized. And so for me, that's very important to, not only speak and share my experience, but also for those who, are scared and afraid to do that. Even sometimes when I share things on Facebook, someone may message me and like, hey, thank you for sharing that, because, those are my thoughts as well. Or, I experienced that, but I didn't want to share that, so, this living experience is not only for Sun, it's, for the community that I share so many experiences with.
And let's honor this heavy weight and responsibility that we have, that's very heavy and very real, because very often our job is to represent other people. And that is, again, so coming down to why you need to cash app folks and give them money. The personal is political. And when you're a human being who is charged with representing others who are not yourself, you are taking yourself personally and putting yourself in a very, very, very vulnerable position. And Leah and Son, I understand that you both are in this position that many people who are on the outside see as wonderful and blessed and great. But you then have this quagmire of your passionate people who are going to be activists and organizers, regardless of whether there's a check or not, because that's who you are and what you do. And you figured out how to get jobs in the nonprofit industrial complex. So you're collecting a check where activism and organizing is kind of assumed to be part of that work as well. But I want to talk about where that disconnect can come in for community and for us as well. What does organizing and activism within a nonprofit structure look like? And what does it look like without or outside of that structure? And y'all are both people who figured out how to do both. So how does that dance work for you? And tell me something, because I'm not sure I ever figured out how to do it well when I was doing this nonsense.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm not even sure, honestly, if I can, I don't know. I don't know how I do it. I know that I am tired of punching the clock. And also, by doing right, I'm doing that to pay bills that keep coming. They don't stop. Still struggling. And I feel like that takes away from me being, present sometimes and being a 24-hour organizer, even though technically I am. But, sometimes during the day, for 8 hours, I'm like, oh, I got to push that to the side. I have to, handle my accounts, work with my patients. So I don't even know, like, if someone knows how to do it and, if it's working, it's a struggle. Like, that's all I got. It's really a struggle. And it's a lot. Again, like I said, it takes you away from self-care. It takes me away from being able to create, or really read thoroughly sometimes, some of the bills and things. Like, I just don't even know, because it's a lot.
Yeah, I agree. There's not a concrete answer that I can offer, and I apologize if my cats peep in and out of the frame. They will do that. But I founded Marching Against Revenge Porn in 2016, and we were just a grassroots organization. I shouldn't say just. We were a grassroots organization for 4 years. And then over this past summer is when I applied for nonprofit status in the state of Connecticut, which a lot of people don't realize costs money. So that's a lot of times out of pocket unless you can get donations from people. So did that and then applied for 501c3 status, another thing that costs money, have to get donations or pay it out of pocket. And then you have this 501c3 now, or this nonprofit, and there's so much work that needs to be put into it that you probably don't expect. And me, as a 24-year-old who's never run a nonprofit before, it's a lot of unexpected things that come up. You need to make sure that, all of your ducks are in order and make sure that everything is established in a proper way. The reason that we became a nonprofit, really the only reason, is because for grant funding, and also because we were getting opportunities to get awards, financial awards and donations from larger organizations, and they wouldn't give it to us without being a 501c3, which I personally think is not great because of the effort and financial cost of becoming a 501c3. But we did it because the funds on the line we then turned into our legal defense fund. And so it's a lot. There's really, existing in both. I work for TCC as a nonprofit, and I also run my own nonprofit, and existing in both of those spaces, and then being an activist and writer outside of in the LGBTQ community and everything else, it's a lot of competing, but also weaving together issues and storylines. And it's a lot. I love it, but it is a lot. And I don't really remember what the question was, but I hope that helped provide some insight in some capacity.
It did. It completely
Yeah.
did.
I just want to say that, right? So again, Black Lives Matter New Haven as grassroots. So um we're denied a lot of, grants um and funding because we are not 501. And so that again makes it harder for us to be able to provide and give back to the community because for the first year or so, it was coming from out of our pockets. So it's like, okay, here I am, clocking in my 8 to 4, barely surviving, got to pay rent, bills, and all of those things. But then here we are, providing services and offerings to the community, and that's coming out of our pockets. So, and then it's like oftentimes with, becoming registered as, 501 and all of the other ways that you're able to identify, your group, movement, organization. Sometimes you then have to be a puppet, right? And then that goes back to, oh, so I can't fight the way I want to. I can't speak and show up the way I want to because you want me to walk and talk a certain way because we need funding. So
And I
it's
work
complex.
but I work very hard at telling people to give us money, give money to organizers, give money to activists, and work hard at not using that word pay. Because in our society, using, pay activists, pay organizers, that's still asking for some transaction. And I believe that that's missing the beauty and the necessity of what it is that activists and organizers do. So it's not as if we need to be paid for this transactional thing that we did, but people need to give us money to support us so that we can do this. You just laid out beautifully that whole place. And when you're working for a nonprofit, there are certain places where your voice is constrained by what that is. So when folks are out there and can just kind of run their mouth, you've got the freedom and the ability to run your mouth, but that funding stream isn't there. And should you be paid to go out on that day that you speak, or should you be paid so that you can sit at home and think expansive thoughts so that you can then say the stuff that needs to happen in order to create change? I believe that humans need to give humans who are creating change money and step away from it and call it a day. So that's a little bit of Kamora's high horse here. And we've got folks who are watching this, and we've got about 5 minutes left. And I want you to share, because again, I just shared mine. So how can people support us? By giving you money and stepping back and not waiting to see the result and not standing around and saying, I gave you money, so therefore I'm an ally. Just give money, call it a day. But two different groups completely. What can nonprofits do to support your activism and organizing work? And what can individuals do to support your activism and organizing work? And this, again, this is, thank you so much, New Haven Pride Center, but I'm asking you authentically for real. So you're not talking to the funders in a way that lets them know that you're deserving of stuff, but what can people do to support you for real to really get the work that you need to get done today done?
Well, I think you said it, right? Pay us, give us money, give us our reparations, give us what we are deserving of. So with that
Thank you for
being
using the
said,
word.
got you. So with that being said, again, my Cash App is $ Sun Queen 2017. Black Lives Matter New Haven Cash App is $ BLMNV. At Cash App, I also have Venmo. That's at Sun Queen 19. Also, Black Lives Matter New Haven is currently doing a scholarship fund to provide two seniors, graduating seniors, with a scholarship. So, again, pay us, give us our money.
Thank you.
Yeah, similar. You can if you're so inclined, you can send me funds through my Venmo and Cash App, which are at Leah Juliett, spelled the same way as on the screen. And then if you're interested in supporting March Against Revenge Porn, you could go to marchagainstrevengeporn.org/donate, and you could set up a one-time or recurring donation, which are so helpful. And that can either go to whatever you want it to. If you want to specifically have it go to our legal defense fund, we are giving $500 grants, we're paying the legal fees of up to $500 of victims who are seeking legal representation. And then also we have other methods of connecting. So if you're a nonprofit, you can join us as an activist ambassador, meaning you can partner with us and we could share resources and kind of support one another digitally. And you would be an ambassador for March Against Revenge Porn. And we accept that for influencers, organizations, anyone who has some sort of platform who wants to connect with us. So everything's on marchagainstrevengeporn.org. And if you're interested in learning more, you can go there as well.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now, I know that Black Lives Matter New Haven has, on March 20th, you're having a women's event. What is that and how do we join you? And should we join you? Why do we want to show up? I know I want to show up, but why do we want to show up?
Absolutely. Show up because Black Lives Matter New Haven is hosting a panel, a conversation on Black women, money, power, and respect. So that would be an interesting conversation to have, as well as April 10th. We are also reclaiming our space, and that will be in person. Follow us on Facebook or on Instagram, both. Black Lives Matter New Haven. Just go to the events tab and you'll be able to see these events that are coming up, as well as you can also donate to us on blacklivesmatternewhaven.com on our website.
And Leah, I'm going to ask you about your next event as well. And I also want to speak to folks who are watching this. And if there's anyone who's feeling this, is she really just going to spend all this time telling people to give people money? Hello, welcome to my activism. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. I think that we spent, because if someone's going to give you a platform, you get in there, you do what they need you for, and then you use it for yourself. Because when you have a chance to use your voice, you use your voice for what it is and you get it across. And my piece of activism here is making it very, very clear. We can talk about equity forever. We can talk about organizing forever. We can talk about supporting people forever. We live in a society that values dollars and cents. I can be out here forever. If I don't have dollars and cents, there's a certain amount of respect that my work isn't getting. When I push and push and push and make it quite clear that you need to give us dollars, I'm saying, I understand what respect looks like in your world. I'm asking you to step into your world. You wear great shirts that say, listen to Black women. You have wonderful memes that talk about listening to us. I know what you respect. Give us dollars or the respect isn't there and we can't achieve liberation. If we're not all working towards this together with an understanding that we all have a part to play, and in this society, dollars are important. Give folks dollars. But Leah, let's come back to you. I'm sorry.
No, I so appreciate what you're saying. So March Against Revenge Porn isn't actively doing any protest marches until the fall because of COVID. But we are doing an online protest series called March Across America, which is an online podcast available on Spotify and Apple, where we are hosting victims and survivors of tech-based sexual abuse to tell their stories and marching virtually to each state to represent a victim from each state telling their story. So you can listen on that. We have a few episodes out already. And then as far as physical events go, I would just point you in the direction of Black Lives Matter. Go to those events. So important. And definitely show up. And visit marchagainstrevengeporn.org to be updated as to when we are doing in-person events again.
Thank you. And thank you so much, both of you, for showing up for this conversation today. As an organizer, I'm going to say thank you for today's one-on-one. I've got a good idea of who you are. Got a good idea of who you are. Got a good idea of what you believe in. Got an idea of where connections will happen further in the future, authentically, not today because we met each other and we should be working together. But I've got ideas. So thank you so much, my sisters, for showing up today. Thank you so much for having this vulnerable conversation. We are at an hour. I know that there's other stuff happening. So this is I took my moment. I said what I needed to say. So I'm going to close it out with, I am done talking right now. Thank you all so much for talking. Leah, I'm going to ask you to share what you need folks to know. Son, I'm going to ask you to share what you need to know. And then Miranda, the room's yours again.
I appreciate that. You can follow us on social media. My personal social media is at Leah Juliett. And then all March Against Revenge Porn is, you could use the hashtag March Against Revenge Porn. You could just type in March Against Revenge Porn to any social media and our handles will come up because they're different on some platforms. Listen to the podcast. We're going to be doing some digital March Across America events as well. But then just show up for victims and survivors of revenge porn of all identities. It's so important. Don't leak nudes. Don't share nudes. Don't make jokes about leaking and sharing nudes. It's not funny. It happens. It leads to, horrible trauma, and just show up for people and point them in our direction when they go through it, when they live through it, and when they survive it.
So I'll end with trust Black women, support Black women, give us your money. We are deserving. Follow Black women. And again, you can follow me at Sun Queen Rights on Facebook, Black Girls of Sunshine, Black Lives Matter New Haven on Facebook and on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Poetic Sun. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Kamora, Leah, Sun. This was an amazing conversation. It was so incredibly healing to be able to hear all of you speak so authentically about your experiences and the ways in which you organize, the ways in which you fight against the system, the ways in which you use your voice, and also speaking very honestly about how exhausting that can be. I think we don't speak authentically to that enough. And so thank you for just being present for this conversation. It was beautiful and absolutely what we need to hear. Everyone watching, you better cash out them some money. Seriously. We've stated enough times, I am bad at memorizing things, but you can go back in this video. It exists, static on their Facebook page and on our YouTube. So go back, find those cash apps, and send them your money. They deserve it. They are absolutely amazing organizers here, and it's an honor to be able to learn from all of you. Especially as someone who is 23 and still figuring out a lot of my shit. So, thank you for being here and for doing this. I'm just gushing at this point. But to our audience members, thanks again for joining us for today's Days of Action. Be sure to catch the rest of our programming, which includes a coffee hour with me in about 25 minutes. You can still register if you go to our Facebook page and click the Google form. And I'll send you over that Zoom link to come hang out with me for a little bit. And then tonight is our night of action with Planned Parenthood Votes at 6 p.m., where you'll learn a little bit about how to tell your story and take action and speak out on the issues that you care about in a grassroots effort and more. So come check that out. I also wanted to plug again the Nasty Women Connecticut and Institute of Sacred Music exhibit, Silent Fire, that opens on March 15th. And last but not least, remember that the center is here for you with our programs, support services, case management, and more. And you can find out all about our programming at newhavenpridecenter.org. You can follow us on social media at New Haven Pride Center on Facebook and Instagram, and New Haven Pride on Twitter. And subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching that from here. And finally, just consider joining us as a member because it's free at newhavenpridecenter.org/join now. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough. This was amazing. And I hope everyone watching is inspired to take action and knows exactly how powerful you are, because you are. All right. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.